So, hey everybody, it's really awesome to be here to present Return of the Cosmic Ether and Crystalline Embodiment. So I want to thank Portal to Ascension and Neil for hosting me for this. I'm really excited to share this. I know it's some trying times. So just a little bit about my background. A lot of the information that I gather is really from life experience and just really paying attention to the deeper soul journey. Our intuition and our true self holds a lot of information. And so when we take the time to really listen to those parts of ourselves, it's amazing what comes through. I also went to a clairvoyant institute for a couple of years and just really learned a lot of great tools and meditated and learned how to, read energy, but I mostly focus on astrology now. Another thing about where I get information is like the life experience part and how that brings about realizations and epiphanies when we go through all sorts of stuff. I mean, I don't think there's any greater guiding principle than just being able to hear our own internal guidance and the downloads that come in that direct us towards, different things and information. So to just really learn from nature, which to me is the greatest teacher, I went into wilderness education, and that included expedition leadership. And I did that for a couple of years. So I've spent a lot of time in the wilderness learning and feeling into just the natural world, and just it just spoke to me so much and helped me to kind of have a basis behind the more positive things that I talk about. I have a science degree, and a lot of my research is all about the whistleblower testimony and connecting dots, because I was recruited to go off planet in 2006, and once I got a grip on what that was all about, I really started to get to know other researchers and whistleblowers, and it just really helped me to understand things on a much greater level. So throughout my life, though, I've been studying like cosmic mythology, astrology, Keylontic science, and there's a lot more to that list, and that's Oceana Dien, like, the I Ching, just the Mayan culture, and a lot about the calendars. So just one of those kind of people that just gravitate towards what I feel interested in, and I educate myself, but I wasn't much of a student when I went to school. So some of my information comes from the Ascension Glossary and is greatly inspired by some of the material from Lisa Renee. And so, yeah, I basically just research and connect dots. And when I get like downloads or something that comes through, I research around to see, how I can develop it better and articulate it better. And this is one of, I think, the greatest sources out there is Lisa's info connected with the Guardians, the Guardian founder races, and the messages coming through. And that's energeticsynthesis.com. And so a lot of the pics and graphs that you'll see in this presentation come from that material. And yeah, a lot of like writing and things took place before I even came across her and Keylontic science, and it just really like matched. I don't really read books though, like front to back, but I like to just bounce around and sort of thread together all these different pieces that seem to belong together. So damaged DNA and timeline wars. This world was once far less dense than it is today. And when we dealt with galactic wars, cataclysms, and the collapse of the higher dimensional civilizations caused by exploding planets, this rapidly changed our form. We were dealing with abuses of free will, hybridization, and the manipulation of incarnate consciousness and our DNA. And we still very much are contending with these things. It has made it so much more difficult to maintain a multidimensional embodiment and connection to spirit because of all that has taken place in our galactic history while in physical form. In this profound window period, we have the opportunity to return to these higher planes of existence. So, it's really based on programs, right? If we weren't programmed, we wouldn't be siphoned off of. We wouldn't be, we wouldn't have our energy stolen. So it's what we choose to believe in and attach ourselves to, which is the most dangerous thing. So, people talk about human sovereignty, and it's not just, freedom. It's about just being embodied and having that direct connect and being able to do the inner work to really understand your own unique relationship to this human experience, but also where that 0 point unified field exists and where we're all connected to it. And this isn't something that we learn in religion or the educational systems. These are teachings and understandings that have basically been wiped out. So it's been very hard to maintain that childhood innocence and knowledge and awareness that we would have been able to grow into if we didn't have things like, you know, tainted food and vaccinations and all these, you know, different things that begin to mold us and shape us into an inauthentic version of ourselves. So I was mentioning the cataclysms. It really all began here in the avatar matrix. So when we look at 12-strand DNA, this is in the upper higher dimensional levels, harmonic universe 4. And this is where chakras and the dimensional blueprint of 10, 11, 12 exists. Also that relates to our DNA. So energy centers and DNA correspond with each other because energy and consciousness connects with, you know, how our DNA functions. And so when this exploded, it began to really, you know, compromise us. And anytime there's any kind of war or attack, I mean, that imprint of trauma ends up kind of sticking with us. And as these kind of things continue, the digression continues because more fragmentation continues to happen. And then what happens is, you know, controller groups or ones that are really service to self, you know, begin to, well, they did create a system in order to, you know, master how to take our energy in order to provide life force to themselves, because they lost that direct connect and their DNA began to, you know, change. So there's just a lot there to talk about. And I develop it a little bit more in other presentations that you can check out that Portal to Ascension actually has in its archives. So when we're looking at the 10th gate, 11th gate, and 12th gate, the 10th and 11th gate have been focused on in order to cut us off from the 12. And that is the root of these reversals and this sort of, you know, digression. Metatronic reversals, artificial tree of life, and the different dark technologies that have been used to act as like harvesting systems. And with the 12th ray cut off, we can't go into that 0 point, because when the 12 connects with the 13, which are the founder races and the Trinity levels, then we, you know, end up looping. And it's like through implants and manipulation of our incarnate consciousness, instead of having that direct connect, it's plugging into something else. And so those gateways have been compromised. And it's really difficult because we're born into that. We're, you know, way down the timeline now, but it's something that we have to really recognize and then push the envelope and override it through willpower and determination to, you know, get the education we didn't get. Obviously, the educational system and society as we know it doesn't want us to know this stuff because it's based in this, I mean, that is the system we exist in. So when the cradle of Lyra exploded, all sorts of things began to take place. These cataclysmic events and ones that followed brought about the moon chains and black hole entities that came into contact with the Earth, who began to genetically modify and harvest the planetary field to be a consciousness prison and farming territory, plummeting the Earth into the darkest age. Moon chain beings are soulless beings like the Greys and Zetas that have been cloned and hybridized for use by the Anunnaki and Draconians. So this is really about taking what resonates and leaving the rest, just things to consider, see what it activates in you. But, you know, with the research that I've done, this resonates the most. Now, not all Greys and Zetas are going to come under this category. Not all Anunnaki or Draconians are negative, right? And when we say negative, it's really just service to self at the expense of us and what our greater potential is. And it's not good to, you know, kind of adopt a victim mentality about it. It's still a part of us because we've got aspects of ourselves that have been fragmented away and that are being somewhat taken and programmed to, you know, feed into this. So we have to see, you know, the greater picture and how we are a part of it, or else it's sort of the us against them. I mean, we are experiencing all of this, you know, this is the healing of our own process. And we are given an ego, we're in a free will universe. And so, we gotta, understand that and just not be victims to this kind of stuff or fear it. It really can only target us in certain dimensional bands of energy, and there's tactics that we can recognize and begin to move away from, and just understand that we're so much bigger than this. This is really just getting us mostly in the personality matrix. That's where the entry point is. And that's why, starting at the age of childhood, we're taught what it means to have self-worth and what it means to be successful. And so the more we purge and clear our beings, the better off we are. I mean, we do that when we do a physical detox. We got to do that on multiple levels. And when we do that, we're able to make room for our own divine essence to come in. So basically, the moon chain lineages connect with Saturn. And so when we kind of bring in the tool of astrology, we can see the impact that these events in our galactic history is still having upon us. So when the cradle of Lyra was destroyed in the Lyran Wars with the Draconian Orion group, this is when the destruction of the Avatar higher level of consciousness took place. The Orion group are a predator force with a predator mind, which is mainly responsible for creating much of the negative ego in humanity through mind control programming. So multiple millions of years ago, the host mission of the Metatron-X family was to actually help repair the parts of the time matrix that fell into separation in the Milky Way that were originally from Andromeda. So the two split apart, this became a fallen system. Lyra was the 12th gate and source of crystal consciousness that connected directly into the Andromeda galaxy. So when that explosion happened, that separation took place. And so there's been multiple rescue missions that have tried to create repair work. When Lyra fell, its pieces that were connected to the natural Trinity wave crystal codes, that is basically the Milky Way and galactic core, connected, where the 0-point unified field and neutron window were like open. The eternal living light architecture became reversed and locked into the Milky Way system. As a result, over time, it became increasingly distorted, and the Metatron Collective attempted to retrieve and repair the 12th Stargate, but unfortunately, that mission failed. As a result of the Metatron Collective being unable to salvage the 12th Stargate, they were absorbed into the artificial intelligence system formed by the black hole entities, and they eventually digressed into the Yahweh system. And again, remember, the black hole entities and moon chain lineages are connected with the moon. So all these events have set up the matrix as we know it. This system is connected into a black cube matrix held through Saturn that is siphoning life force from our universal time matrix and routing it back to their black hole system. Saturn's black cube holds a massive tank that acts as a harvesting station for blood sacrifice from human beings through things like wars and rituals. So when you think of benevolent groups, like even the Melchizedeks became patriarchal, we're dealing with a lot of infiltration. When we look at, a lot of the secret societies in some of those groups, and some of the advanced ones that got wiped out, it's like the fallen angelics have really gained a foothold on, how to control the human race and wipe out most of our, true history. So this is different, when we say Metatron Collective than the actual Archangel Metatron, as people know. When we look at things that have taken place as these wars, have happened, we might still see names that have a negative connotation, but it doesn't mean that the highest expression of it doesn't still exist. But as these wars have created infiltrations and digressions to certain soul groups and families, some of what their expressions have been and what they sort of got pulled into, is what we're, all healing, because we all, carry, bits of this. And every single one of us has a purpose to, reconnect with this 12th Stargate. And of course, going into the 13 is all a part of how we can do this repair work. Because if we can connect into the 0 point, we can actually heal these gateways. But we have to kind of get back to the source in order to have that life force and regenerative power to be able to sort out a lot of these other places that are damaged. It's similar to having some incredible revelation in life and being able to go back into your past and heal a lot of the trauma. We can have things take place in the here and now and go back and actually heal galactic wars that are still keeping us in a loop. So it's been recently observed that the solar system Stargate 7, located inside the planet Saturn, has been transmitting artificial intelligence beams through the moon that corrupted the ultraviolet wave spectrum in our planetary magnetosphere. So many of these mind control structures on Earth were held in place through magnetic imprints transmitted from the moon and artificial satellite. The Orion forces from Saturn have been using the moon as an outpost to transmit lunar forces to Earth. So when we talk about Milky Way and Andromeda splitting and how Saturn is connected to the seventh gate, and we've been limited to our 7 chakras, and we've been dealing with the Saturn moon matrix, this is what keeps us in this recycling system and why we just keep, you know, because it's like we're being held in this net, in this tank. So a lot of this information, you know, comes from the sources that I mentioned in the beginning that absolutely explain so much about what is playing out on the world stage. I mean, it's obvious there are patriarchal programs that have impacted both men and women, but this sort of event, these events that took place with these multiple cataclysms that produce these beings is now, you know, like a dilemma between us as humans, the interferences to our organic, you know, template, and the way we relate as the masculine and feminine in the world, and all the injustices and abuses to keep this system alive and to feed that system, because it basically relies on feeding on other things in order to sustain itself, to the point where its goal is to have immortality. And we've been sort of sucked out of our own being, and they've used that, harvested it, and found a way to have immortality without getting it from a spiritual path, but getting it through theft. So the origination of the fall of humanity began when the organic structures that interconnected the Andromedan galaxy and Milky Way in the metagalactic core were attacked by black hole entities, many whom joined together later on to form the negative alien agenda. So starting from that original Lyran war and explosion of planets, we separated from the 7 higher heavens and have been locked into the 7 chakra system and patriarchy, blocked from accessing the bridge to the rest of ourselves in unity consciousness. Our 7th chakra has been implanted and spiritual knowledge has been distorted. Tiamat explosion was a Sophionic planet. So this explosion is why, you know, aspects of the mother energy are so involved in this particular planetary body. That was when, you know, Tiamat and Apsu were holding the balance, and so many different events have taken place in order to disrupt the balance. And that's sort of, you know, what happens when you're in a free will universe. The whole concept of playing with power comes in. And then Maldek was the masculine counterpart after that explosion, and it was working with this particular earth body as the masculine and feminine, and then Maldek explodes. So all these different things have continued to create reversals and frequency distortions and programs that have made us very vulnerable as a human race to continual infiltration and attack. And a lot of it, you know, I mean, has nothing to do with, you know, our choices, and religions have really found a way to make us feel like the, you know, the sinners, and has really, you know, distorted some of these true teachings that help us to understand how to heal and restore our true architecture, and, you know, complete this soul alchemy to open up these other gateways that have that we have not been very familiar with. So Tiamat's explosion and destruction is the reason our 3D planet has an artificial satellite placed by the moon chain lineages, which is our moon. And talking about, you know, going into the Stargate 7 and how the mind control structures on Earth were held in place through magnetic imprints transmitted from the moon, which is an artificial satellite. The Orion forces from Saturn have been using this moon as an outpost. So if you see the connection between this dark Saturn of control and how it uses the moon to broadcast this mind control, I mean, we're on the other end of it all, just really struggling to, you know, come together in harmony and unity and have, you know, relationships that are sustainable. So we're seeing a lot more sacred union couples coming together, people that really feel that they found their twin flame. And this is like a huge deal. And a lot of targeting can take place, and a lot of events can take place in our life to really throw us off and knock us off our center, so that it's very difficult to, you know, be on that path. But fortunately, so many have felt into like their deeper soul calling and have been able to, you know, be on that path that provides those synchronicities and experiences that bring us closer to those kind of goals. So the female consciousness of the planet Tiamat was Sophionic. So when she exploded, her consciousness descended into a collective foreign body, which is known as the Achamoth. Achamoth is named for the wounded goddess' fragmented body parts, which were collected and trapped by the negative alien agenda and fallen angelics in the 2D underworld of the planetary body to incubate or impregnate archonic creations. And that's from Ascension Glossary. So these are pieces of ourself that are being used to birth realities that we don't want. We have to understand that we're connected to this, that our true divine template holds the goddess energy and the mother, father, Christ Sophia. And because of this explosion and the trauma from that, they were able to collect the wounded goddess fragmented body parts. And so as a humanity, we go into these underworld journeys and we collect our parts and we find ourselves again, and then we're able to rise. And when we, you know, track some of these mythologies, particularly connected to the divine feminine, they are about going into the underworld. And a lot of that is to do the repair work in order to integrate polarity, to be on the earth, to go into the underworld, to connect with the higher self, and to emerge a much more whole being. But, you know, of course, there's a lot of attack and difficulty. And in our culture today, those sort of initiations aren't fully understood at all. We've gotten further and further removed from connecting to our soul, connecting to things like Kairos Gamos that these ancient civilizations and cultures understood, the teachings of the law of one, the Essenes, and, you know, these beings that we're holding the true template of the planetary body that has been given to us as a gift that we get to experience through the zodiac wheel in order to do the repair work. You know, understanding it can help. Not everybody needs to understand their chart to do this, but it's certainly helpful in a world that is attempting to distract us constantly. So other versions about just sort of, you know, the creation story in terms of this planetary Earth that we only know a little bit about as far as its history. There's so much before this particular planetary body became about. Just it's unreal, you know, how much history we're kept from. You know, in religion and schools, it starts with Genesis, and then, you know, and for some, the Sumerian tablets. And so anyway, the Nag Hammadi says that she morphed from a pure energetic state into the material body of the earth. Hence her story describes the origins of the earth. So if we look at the Tiamat explosion, the influence of Marduk, those are all, you know, stories I'm not going to get into right now, but this part of the goddess that comes into the physical planet, but then is kind of like, you know, functioning on three different levels, you know, maiden, mother, crone. When we look at the mythologies of Demeter and Persephone, that's a good example. And when we, you know, study the different archetypes connected to, you know, the goddess, you know, it shows the underworld goddess energies, you know, the journey into the underworld, the need to escape the grips of like Hades, and that abduction into the underworld, which is really playing out a lot of the stuff that I'm, you know, talking about. And then, you know, the maiden, you know, kind of starts off all innocent, and then the mother and the daughter, you know, reunite, but the crone is the wisdom of the whole experience. And so these different cycles of nature and the things that really make the planetary body like what it is as far as cycles are concerned are very much connected to this, because we're on a Mother Earth that has a bigger story. So much occurred before this event that I'm about to talk about. But now that we're on this particular, you know, planetary energy, after Tiamat exploded in the 5D system of Tara, we came down in here and had, you know, different root races and cycles, starting with Polaris, Hyperborea, and then Lemuria and Atlantis. So that's another bunch of information I'm not going to bring in. But, you know, there was the electrical wars and Lemurian Holocaust, but it was during the Atlantean cataclysm about 26,000 to 30,000 years ago when the planetary stargates, the planetary grids, and ley lines became controlled by the negative alien agenda races such as the reptilians, the Anunnaki, Nephilim, the Alpha Draconis, Orion group, Zetas, Greys, and some Nordics. So we've already, you know, touched upon the history connected to Lyra, and that stuff down into the Orion Wars. And I mean, it's just like, there's so much there. But here we are, you know, on a planet with a grid network that has now been compromised and infiltrated. So it's just, the wars just keep following wherever, you know, the seedings of humans are taking place, because it's, you know, all like linked to this free will universe and the stories that have taken place that we are inheritors of. And that's why we're going to be the ones that break the cycle and patterning, because ultimately, you know, we carry all these different archetypes within ourselves, and we need to reconcile these energies within so that we can emit the medicine and solution and heal the, you know, the planet of this kind of stuff. So since the Nephilim Wars, the Nibiru, Anunnaki resistance, and patriarchal Melchizedek factions decide to take over the inner Earth, several power generators exploded and ripped apart the surface continents of the Earth. The planet Earth tilted on its axis, which damaged all planetary gates, grid networks, portals, and stargates on the planet. All the pyramids and ET technology disconnected and went offline. Flooding and cataclysm destroyed the Atlantean colonies and much of the Earth's surface. So this level of destruction is really to make it, it's to break that circulation of the natural Earth grids and how it connects to different star systems and alignments that connect with the stargates on the Earth. So the Draconian Orion group are also referred to as black suns. The black suns have reversed their DNA. It's a reverse 10 DNA strand and running a reversal life current. We can activate 12 strands and beyond, and they are trying to keep us from this. So this is sort of this is where this reversal concept, you know, exists. And so that disconnection from source and 0 point unified energy has now created a way to harvest our energies in order to have a food source. So they have a hierarchical system. Earth-based reptilians appear to be in command over EBE, or biological entities known as small grays. And those are considered the moon chain lineage that are used by the negative factions of the Anunnaki and Draconians. They access limited levels of biological immortality through the vampirism and siphoning of other living things, such as the planet Earth. So AI and transhumanism is kind of what's being encouraged or presented to those that might hold, you know, important positions in the world. And it's just kind of like trying to convince, you know, people that, you know, this is a good idea, because part of the dark controller agenda is to convince us of something that's not right for us or not good for us. That's why, you know, some, you know, might actually think that 5G is a good idea and might still look up at the sky and deny the fact that something's not quite right with the fact that our skies have been being sprayed. And there's still a lot of denial connected to it. So if you can convince well-intentioned people, but they might be unconscious, of something and present it as a good idea, then, you know, that creates even more of an issue. I mean, when I was being recruited to go off planet, that's what I was presented with. They tried to make it look like a really good idea. But, you know, upon further research, I discovered a lot about the infiltration of secret space programs and what happened with Project Paperclip and all this other stuff and what these individuals were involved with. And that's what we have to do. You know, we need to develop our intuition and be so authentic with ourselves that we can tell on a vibratory level if something is not truth. That is the greatest protection we have right now. And our capacity to tap into the creative imagination, hold visions and dreams, and manifest them into reality. And we are and can be that override frequency. These lower entities and beings really have nothing on us if we can remember the fullness of all that we are.